Welcome to the 8th day of January 2025. As we take a look at what we're going to talk about, well, there's a lot to talk about all across the western United States, from the California wildfires to the change to much colder weather over the Rockies and the plains, and what's going to unfold here over the next couple of weeks. First of all, we'll have a break in the weather today. We will have some windy areas as we're in between systems. The wind-prone areas of I-25, Interstate 80, winds are going to pick up, and with some snow on the ground, that's going to cause some areas of blowing and drifting snow, especially after a very cold night last night. The snow hasn't really settled yet, so watch out for that I-80 and I-25 travelers. We'll also briefly talk about what's going on in California and the reason for the wind there. Now, we're going to see another wave come in tonight into early Thursday, and it's going to cover the same ground as the areas that have been picking up light snowfalls over the last several days. It's basically going to take the same path. We have a break Friday, then another one comes in, same thing, same exact thing. The northern areas for the I-90 corridor of Montana, northeastern Wyoming, and western South Dakota, you're going to get the most snow out of this pattern. Light snows will be found elsewhere, and temperatures are going to remain cold as the northwest flow continues. Now, there's going to be a bit of a warm-up. We're going to see a temporary shift of the high pressure come into the Rockies for 2 or 3 days next week. So there's a little bit of a thaw coming next week. But don't rest on your laurels, because if a certain pattern evolves and develops, which is possible, well, then we're going to go right back to a potentially much colder weather pattern by the weekend of the 19th. So a lot of moving parts going on, not only here, but over a large part of the lower 48. Some more snowscapes to show you here across the region, looking like winter all of a sudden, and more winter scenes are to come. With more snow coming, just these little breaks in the waves give us opportunities for views like this across the region yesterday and into today. Satellite imagery shows the next Pacific wave coming up, over, down, and around the high pressure ridge. And that's going to bring another plunge of colder Canadian air south right across the region again. And as we take a look at what's going on in California, what we have is a classic Santa Ana wind event. Now, we could draw some analogies to the Santa Ana winds to what happens along the front range of the Rocky Mountain front of Montana to the front range of Colorado and Wyoming down into northern New Mexico, and we get strong down-sloping westerly winds. Well, Santa Anas are similar, but the winds come from the east, and the winds are channeled through all of the complex terrain. For those of you familiar with Southern California, all of those little mountain ranges and some of the bigger mountain ranges off on the south end of the Sierra, you squeeze the air through these gaps, and the air is not only coming off the higher terrain and downhill, but it gets squeezed through the gaps. That accelerates the winds. When the air sinks, just like a Chinook wind, you lose humidity, and from the air being compressed, compression of a gas warms it up. So the air gets warmer, and it gets very dry, and it gets very strong. And it takes a special pressure pattern, a special setup, to cause this. Now, Santa Ana winds happen every winter. Some years they're worse than others. It all depends on the configuration. Santa Ana winds have gone on for as long as we know, and they're going to occur again this winter. In fact, they could occur again next week. What we have is we have a very tight pressure gradient between an upper level low over the Baja of Mexico, and we have this high pressure ridge that we've been showing you sitting off the west coast. See how the stacking of the black lines here? There's a very tight pressure gradient, surface and aloft, getting squeezed through the mountains of central and southern California. And this is the worst case scenario. It has to do with the big change in air pressure over a short distance. And if we were to focus in this was as of 5 p.m. Mountain Time yesterday, the upper level low and the upper level high and the tight pressure gradient lines right up with Southern California. If you look at the pressure, you get high pressure here over the northern Great Basin, And then you've got low pressure down here. So you've got the high here, the low here at the surface, and this gets squeezed through the mountain gaps and goes from the east to the west. So it's not a westerly wind, it's a very strong easterly wind. And you get wind gusts and strongest winds. If you notice, there's a little bit of a wind shadow in some of these areas here, but areas exposed are right along the coast. As you get into Santa Monica, as you get into West LA here, as you get into the mountains and foothills up here, you're going to have these very powerful winds. The only thing that's going to make this go away is to have the pressure features move away. Now, this is by 5 p.m. Mountain Time today. The low begins to sink more to the south. The wind direction changes more to a northerly direction, which is going to help things out, and the winds will ease considerably. But it's going to be, for most of the day today, that fire situation is not going to be good. Now, of course, everyone's saying California has been dry, and it has been for the last 90 days. They haven't had any really good winter precipitation yet. But a reminder, 2023 and 2024, especially early 2024, was very wet. In fact, 2023 was extremely wet in Southern California, and that's part of the problem. When you have very wet winters, you get a lot of growth. That growth dries out, and then that becomes fuel for the wildfires. So this is where we're going to be today. Now we've got this low that's down here in the Baja, Mexico, that's going to want to kick off this way as this next wave, this is the wave coming in tonight and tomorrow, comes in and merges. And this is where we get the big snow and ice event that's going to be in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, and will then go across parts of Tennessee, northern Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and into parts of the Carolinas. That's going to cause a real mess. While the winds ease here in California, cold air pours in out of Canada into the north central United States, continued very cold in the northeast. This is the precipitation pattern with the next wave coming south. You can see it's taking exactly the same path as what we've seen before. So later today and tonight into tomorrow morning, this snow will spread south along and east of the divide. Notice southwestern Wyoming, Utah here, you're just going to miss out as it's going to be along and east of the divide with these waves. But out here on the plains, I-25, I-80, I-90, watch out for icy roads and highways. Another push of very cold air comes in, and there's your snowfall. This is basically from tonight through late tomorrow. You can see parts of New Mexico, Texas here getting into the act tonight and into early tomorrow. Then here comes the next wave that comes in for Friday night and Saturday. Another one comes in right behind it. The results, the same. We get a north to south flow of precipitation again. The second wave on Saturday is a little stronger. So southeast Montana, northern Wyoming, the Black Hills and Bighorns tend to do very well here with snowfall. So watch the I-90 corridor, southeast and eastern Montana, northeastern Wyoming, the mountains of southern Wyoming, northern Colorado, more snow in Wyoming's western mountains, and then scattered lighter amounts on the plains, a good swath of snow for North Dakota, into parts of western Nebraska as well. So basically a repeat, and this is the snow that happens with the second wave. If you put them both together, looks like this. So you put the two systems together, we're going to add to more snow in many areas. You can see that swath of heavier snow up here. Then when you take a look at what's going to happen across the nation between now and Monday, we have this heavy band of snow going across here. Snow gets all the way maybe down into Atlanta, down into north central areas of North Carolina, pretty far south into Big Bend country of Texas and northeast Mexico. Look at that. And then a good swath of snow here. There's just a lot happening. So if you're going to go traveling across the United States, you're going to run into weather in some form or fashion. Quite a bit of ice potential going across this area here as well. Then as we get into next week, this is the break, and this is the possible repeat Santa Ana wind event. You can see it right there. This is next Tuesday. Oh boy, here we go again. Another upper level low comes into Southern California. The high is still there. We have the potential for another steep gradient right here. Yikes. So let's hope that doesn't happen, but in some form or fashion, there's another Santa Ana coming to California next week. This high here is going to expand eastward. As it does, this is the thaw we talked about that's going to briefly happen between, let's say, Tuesday and Friday of next week. There's going to be some warmer conditions. Southwest flow will bring warmer air. The colder air gets shunted. But this guy right here is going to instigate a dip of the jet stream again by next weekend. We just have to see how it unfolds. But if this low comes in and dives southeast into the Rockies and high pressure builds back up in the Eastern Pacific, which you're going to see right here, this is a boy howdy moment. Because if this happens, then the door to very, very cold air straight from, if you follow the wind flow is from the Arctic Circle all the way into central Canada, then pushing into the north central United States. So if this transpires, by the weekend of the 19th, Arctic air will spread further into the western United States than it has all winter. We just have to watch and see. If this high doesn't develop as strongly as this, well, then this cold shot will still be a cold shot, but it won't be as intense. But the European model here is advertising a pretty good Arctic plunge, but it's early in the ball game. But this is a heads up, especially to livestock interests, by the weekend of the 19th and the week following. We'll just keep an eye on it. So lots going on, lots to worry about weather-wise across the country. We'll see you tomorrow.